Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. And in this video, what I want to do is just talk about writing the observable pattern. I'm going to do the example in JavaScript, but theoretically, the principles of the observer pattern can be done in any language for any purpose. It's merely a design pattern. And the idea, it's basically the idea behind it is that you have functions that run. I mean, essentially, is the same as an event listener, And I'll debate whether I want to even just build an event listener as well as part of this lesson. Maybe we will, and show you both patterns. Okay, but basically, let's just see here. Let's just create an HTML file because we're going to just show it to you as applied to like the DOM. Okay, so I'm going to write my JavaScript in the HTML file. Okay, and then I'm just going to write a div here. Okay, that'll be sort of where stuff happens. Okay, and then we will write a script tag. Okay, and here we go. So I'm going to write a class called observer. Okay, and so you can see here GitHub Copilot wants to do the job for me, but I'd rather do this on my own. Okay, so here we go. We have a class called observer. And the basic idea is that this observer observes data. Okay, we're going to use an object so that we can have multiple values of data. So we're going to say, hey, constructor. Okay, I'm going to say like initial data. Okay, and thank you, GitHub Copilot. Today you decided to start really kind of helping me out. Okay, but no, we'll just say like this dot. Yeah, I guess that works. That makes sense. Initial data. Okay. So essentially what we're doing here is we're just saying, hey, like you're going to pass in an object of data, which will give this a default value of an object. Okay, and then basically what we're going to do is say that, let's see here, we're going to grab that initial data, and then we're going to create an empty array of subscribers. A subscriber is a function that's waiting for saying, hey, I will run whenever the data changes. Okay. Okay, and we'll make that an array. Okay. Cool. Now next, what we want to do is we want to be able to say, hey, certain functions can subscribe, can say, hey, I want to use that data whenever it changes. Okay, so we have to create a function for subscribing. Okay, which that's pretty much what we would do. Essentially what they would do is they would pass a callback to say, hey, here's the function that I want you to run whenever the data changes, and then that gets pushed into the subscribers array. Okay. Then we'll write an update function. Okay. And basically what this is doing is exactly right. We would update, we'd pass in the new data, so it would update that data variable. Then we would take that array of subscribers and then loop over each one and call back that callback, passing in the data. Okay, and then that is pretty much the minimum of what you would need to do. Okay, that would kind of do the job. Just to show you this in practice. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new observer. Thank you, GitHub Copilot. That's actually pretty nice. Okay, I was using it the other day with like Java. I didn't find my Copilot experience quite as great in data engineering stuff with Java, like things like Apache Flink and Apache Spark. But with JavaScript, yay. Oh, the world of AI. Okay. But basically here we're creating a new observer and has this initial data. Okay, and we're gonna subscribe. Okay. And basically that's what it would look like, but I want to give a little bit more complicated function. So because we want to update that div. Okay, so what I want to do is say, hey, I'm going to just use curly brackets. Okay, and we're going to say, hey, const div equals, and it knows exactly what I want to do. How sweet is that? Okay, and it knows exactly where I'm going. Okay, perfect. So basically I'm grabbing that div. Okay, document.querySelector/div. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to set that inner HTML to this string using the values that were passed in, because again, we're being this subscribed function is being passed in the data. Okay, neat. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're also going to create a button. Click. And then when that button gets clicked, we'll update the data so you can see how like the subscriber can then rerun the function. Okay. Uh, do, 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 do. Subscribe. Okay. And what I do want to do is that when you initially subscribe it, I do want it to run that callback initially, because that basically you want to do an initial render in this case. So we're going to say, hey, whenever you subscribe, not only do you push that callback in there, but we'll also do call the callback with this data. Okay. So that when you subscribe it, it's going to use that initial data. And then what we'll do is we'll make it when we call the button. Okay, so document.query selector button dot add event listener. Okay, and it knows exactly where I'm going. I want to then update the observer when you click that button. So you see here's a function that's going to use that observer.update, pass it an updated object. Okay, and something's not closed. Okay, I think it's this function. There we go. Okay, cool. So let's actually see this in action. So if I open this up, open with live server. Okay, I see that initially there's John 30. Notice I never wrote John 30. It's just an empty div. Okay, but what happens is that when I register this with the observer, okay, I'm calling that callback initially up front. Okay, and then when I click, okay, what happens is that it gets updated and Jane, it gets updated with the new data. That function gets run. And this all works fine and good. Okay, now there's a couple ways we can improve upon this. Okay, so for example, maybe we want to make sure that hey, we don't want to call every subscribe function if not every subscribe function uses the specific keys that were updated. Okay, so you might see this a lot in things like useEffect and React and whatnot, where they ask you for like an array of dependencies. That's essentially where we're going here. We're going to say, hey, we also want to give an array of dependencies with each subscribe function, so that way, in case we don't have to run it, we don't run it. Okay. So what we're going to do here is what I'm going to do is we're going to change the subscribe function. So that way, instead of it getting a callback, it's going to get a subscriber in the sense that it's going to get an object with the function and the list of dependencies. Okay. And essentially, we're going to push here is an object where there is a callback, which will be subscriber.callback, and dependencies, which will be subscriber.deps. Okay. I think we got an extra curly bracket there. Okay, and then instead of using this .callback, it'll be subscriber.callback. Okay, so essentially what I'm doing is that now instead of saving an array of just functions, I'm saving an array of objects that give me the function and a little bit more information about the context of that function. Saying, okay, hey, there's going to be a bunch of strings to say, okay, these are the properties this is subscribing to. Okay, and I'm going to be able to use this so that way we can do more granular updates. Okay, so now whenever we update the data, instead of just like swapping out the data object, what I'm going to want to do is I want to merge because I may not be updating every property. Okay, so we'll do something like this. This is data, and then data. That's perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're merging the two objects together. Okay, so essentially, first we start off with the initial properties that already exist in this data, and then we're going to add any additional properties that come in from the update. Okay, now what I want is I want to know what specific properties were updated. So I'm going to go get const keys equals object.keys data, so it knows exactly where I'm going. That's pretty cool. Okay, and that's GitHub Copilot that's doing that. So that's I just got it like 2 days ago, and I'm just like, this is pretty cool. Okay, const keys object.keys. So what I'm doing there is I'm developing an array of strings. It's going to be an array of all the keys in that data object. So that way I know specifically what was updated. And now what I want to do is build a list of functions that do need to be called again. Okay. So I'm going to create an empty array, const subscribers to update. And actually this might do exactly what I need. Let's take a look. So this subscribers.filter. So we're running a filter on the subscribers function, which makes sense to me, on the subscribers array. Okay, it's going to take for each subscriber, and it's going to check to say, hey, does the dependency, so does deps.sum, so since deps is an array, so it's trying to see, hey, dot sum, does each dependency keys includes dep? Yeah, so it's just trying to see like, hey, let me just think about that for a second. Okay, so essentially we're going through each subscriber, and we're taking say, hey, are any of the dependencies, so sum, return true, does dependencies keys dot includes dep. Okay, so essentially, okay, so we're going to see, hey, if any of the dependencies are included in the array of updated values. Okay, so yeah, so basically what this would do is create an array of just the ones that need to be updated. So in that case, all we really need to do is change this to subscribers to update. Okay, and now this is more efficient because if I have different functions that need to be called and they don't use one of the values that were updated, they won't get called again. Okay, so this is where you start getting into like this sort of more surgical updates. This is kind of how things like Svelte and Solid.js with their signals kind of work with these like really surgical observable patterns. Okay, so now let's create like a different node here. Okay, we'll call this main tag. Okay, and what I'm going to do is in these functions I'm going to include a console log so we can see how often they run. Console.log, 1. Okay, so every time 1 is that first subscription. Then we'll create another subscription for the main tag. Okay, and this one will be 2. So every time that runs, that'll be 2. Query selector main. Okay, and in this case, what's going to happen is that it only uses the name data. So we'll say just the name. Okay, and then now when we update, what's going to happen is that we're only going to update the age. Okay. Okay, cool. Save. And so if I hit refresh, well, there's something going on wrong there. So let's take a look. On subscriber.callback is not a function. That's right, it's not subscriber.callback for each. So for each subscriber, it should be subscriber.callback. And that should fix that. Okay, does that fix that? Subscriber.callback is not a function. See here, for subscribers to update. Okay, the subscribers at filter, subscriber return. Dep set true. So for each subscriber, so each one's it's a callback, right? Because we go over here, where did I push that into? Yeah, so callback. This data. Well, let's do this. Let's first start off with a console log of subscriber. So I can just see the output. Okay, so it's not coming from there, it's somewhere else. I'm calling subscriber.callback. Now here's where the issue is. Subscriber.callback. Oh, because I have to update the way these work. Okay, my bad. I see. The issue is in the code. Okay, subscribe. So this should be an object now. And then this first value of the function should be the callback. And then after the callback, we should have the dependencies, which is dep's name. Okay, and then over here is going to be the same story. So I got to wrap it in curly brackets. And then this is going to be callback. And then over here we'll put depths. And see, it picks up on it right away. Okay, so you see, like here I'm saying this one depends on name and age, this one depends on name. But see, when I only update age, it should only update this one. So we shouldn't see that console log 2 a second time. So let's confirm that's the case. Okay, we see that. So we see, hey, look, 1 and 2, good. They were both initially rendered because we initially updated name and age. But now I'm going to click, which should only update age. And see, we only see the 1 because only that first subscriber should be updated. So you see, we've made this more efficient. Can we make it better? Yes, because right now, what if I want to update this age relative to what the age was before? Right now, it doesn't really handle that. Okay, so what might be better is instead of passing in uh, of the new value, the new object of values directly, what would be better is that if it received a callback. Okay, so we'll say CB. Okay, and then what's going to happen is going to say the new data const data equals, okay, CB passing in this data. Okay, so now what's going to happen is that this function needs to return the new data. Okay, and then, you know, it all works the same. But now I can do something like this. So instead of saying age 25, I can now say, hey, data, let's say right here, again, we don't want to update the name on this one. And I think we got too many parentheses there. Okay, age data plus 1. See, I can do that now because now this function has access to what the current values are. So now I can do sort of like relative updates. Okay, so now I can click this button and see it updates the age, and I can now have like a more sort of reactive counter kind of thing. Okay, yeah, and that's essentially how reactivity in most frameworks in generally works. There's some sort of observable type pattern being done somewhere in the framework. In React, it's a little bit different. I think that's like the only one that doesn't really quite do it that way. The way it works in React is that essentially you are running a function again with a new set of values, but then what it's doing is not quite as surgical. Essentially, what you're doing is suddenly it's using that function is used to render a virtual DOM, so a virtual representation of what will be, and then it's comparing that virtual DOM, hey, this new virtual representation, to the actual DOM and saying, hey, where are those surgical updates to be made? It can be it's a little bit more involved. That's partly a little bit more over my head, but I think this gives you an idea of like how the observable pattern works. Basically saying, hey, I have these functions. Whenever this value changes, I'm gonna go run these functions, and then those functions can do whatever, wherever. But there's ways we can improve upon it, as you saw, where by just double checking, making sure we're not, making sure that we are only running the functions that need to be run, okay, and 2, making that the update take a function so that way we can make the update to the values possibly relative to the current values. Okay, but yeah, have a great day. My name is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. Have a great day and enjoy.